So I think for today, our team decided that we had enough time to solve the problem. So I guess we'll find out. Our overall objective was to improve a training methodology that's for vaccine introduction. An approach that is innovative, but that occurs through a customized learning approach. So that's what we were working towards. For the outcomes, we wanted to make sure that there is knowledge gained and also there are skills acquired. Also wanted to make sure that there is a significant level or degree of retention of knowledge. And also we wanted to make sure that they are able to apply what they've learned. So prior to doing all of this, we would like to have a stakeholder meeting where we'll define clearly what our objectives are for the training approach we are thinking about, training or learning approach, including specific standards. So that's something that needs to happen before we actually start doing any of this. So for our outputs, we're going to standardize the training materials for every specific level. So we're trying to borrow on an approach which hasn't really been done before, because usually what you find is the same amount of information sort of being pushed at its level, but we would make sure that the information at a specific level is relevant to the specific needs. We'd make sure that it's very contextualized. Messaging is segment. We're going to use SMS and WhatsApp approach, but we're going to push sort of text messaging, and then also using a segmented messaging approach. And then we're going to create this peer learning platforms so that there can be peer-to-peer learning via social media. And so the WhatsApp platform is one of the ones that we talked about. So in terms of measurement, we will do a pre-test of the specific tools that we're going to use for the training or learning approach. And then would have, that's going to give us an immediate understanding of the context, and we're able to identify what specific problems are, specific problems exist, and then try to work on improving or coming up with materials to address some of these. And we'll also make sure that that we're able to apply the perception to apply required knowledge and skills. So we'll use an improved SMILE sheet, not from what the talk we had today. The SMILE sheet doesn't. It's not necessarily there. It has its limitations, but we feel that an improved one would serve our course well. And then we also have a pre and post test of the actual results. Now, in terms of adverse consequences, we believe that based on our measurement methodology, we should be able to identify any specific problems that might create problems in the future. And as soon as we identify that, the goal is to try to solve them as quickly as possible. So these are our measurement outcomes. So we intend to do training at least 6 weeks prior to the introduction, because we would. Actually prior to the training, we like to start out at least 6 weeks back, which will give us enough time to address any issues. We are going to do intra-training. We are going to do post-training, so that's the frequency. And we also have a statistician who is going to be responsible for analyzing the data. And in terms of who receives their measurement outcomes, we'd like all the stakeholders to be privy to this information. The questions that we would answer during the measurement would be specific training, the effectiveness of the training, retention of knowledge, and also application of the knowledge. So we feel these 3 things are critical to the success of that project. Now, for integration of the measurement findings, what we decided to do is to have a refresher training as soon as we realize that there are problems with, we find problems with the actual project. We would have refresher messages through prompts and also through job aids. The frequency of integration or integrating the measurement findings will happen, as I mentioned before, as soon as the problems are identified. And also for reinforcement, we would have a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation approach. Now, for the lessons learned, we would communicate those through policy briefs, through publications, through stakeholder debriefs, and also through monitoring. Well, that's yeah. It would also serve as a model for other countries, because we believe that other countries are also going to be introducing, or would be in the same situation as needing new approaches to conduct immunization training. So it's important that this model be well documented and then disseminated, and shared with other countries. So the financial requirements. We're fairly confident that project funds might be adequate for conducting the actual training piece or learning piece of the project, but we would also try to leverage funds in country, so local or in-country funds, in case we had to do refresher trainings, because we feel that the project funds might not necessarily be enough if, for instance, we had to redo trainings after we found out that there are significant problems. In terms of the context for how all of this would happen, there are some considerations that we have. Now, one of the things that we were doing is using a electronic platform, so the WhatsApp messages and the text messages, but it's important that we have access to the telephones and to mobile network. So if those things are non-functional, then our approach is not, we probably would suffer some. Also, there needs to be a power supply. We also, within the context, we also need to have mentorship and supportive supervision. And then we also need job aids. So these job aids will be developed during the process of designing the training material, so during the package development. And also we need the stakeholders to be very supportive. So we would engage them during this process. So the key stakeholders that we identified for our project are universities and training institutions, the private sector, civil society organizations such as professional organizations and regulatory organizations or bodies. The involvement of these organizations are going to be through all the phases of the project, so through the planning, through the design, implementation, evaluation, etc. And this will contribute to routine immunization strengthening, as an input. And the government structure, the project is currently embedded in the current government structure, so we didn't think that was going to be too much of a problem. The capabilities required, we would need instructional designers, we would need training experts and facilitators, statistician, we need a finance expert, because there's money involved. We also need a project manager to manage this project. We did have some external risks. So the inability, for instance, to find experts to conduct trainings, competing priorities of some of the healthcare workers. So they usually have to do multiple things. And so that could be a problem if, for instance, they don't have the time to be present at a training. Instability or other social problems is one of the things that can also negatively impact us. And then power supply is one of the things. For the internal risks, we have delays in arrival of funds. Sometimes it takes a while for the funds to come through, so that could be problematic. And resistance to training or learning new approaches. People are resistant to change, so that's an issue. For the security and safety concerns, we have instability, terrorism, targeting of healthcare workers for the trainers, etc. And for sustainability, we are advocating for a national budget, because we need to make sure that if training needs to occur later on, there's money for that. And we also will partner with public-private, the institutions for institutions within the government program to be able to support our projects moving forward. So the last one, we would definitely document best practices, because we want whatever we're developing to be used in other countries if possible. we would have comprehensive transition plans and a strategy. And for incentives for learning, we would have certificates. We also have recognitions. We also identify champions. One of the things that we talked about that's innovative, and I want to say, is to identify peer leaders based on performance. And these peer leaders would be able to take part in other trainings where they would have some financial incentives because of that. So that's something they can look forward to. We also have a communication plan to communicate with all our partners, stakeholders, and to the local community, religious organizations, etc. So thank you. Got run out of time.
Thank you. Any questions, particularly from the peer review panel for Team Pink?
Just a clarification. So the actual training would be face-to-face, cascade down?
Yes, so it's a cascade type training, but as we mentioned, it has to be very specific. The content is specific to every level. We don't want to do a broad sort of theme thing all the way down, but it's very specific for every level. Yes. Thank you.
Cool.
Yes.
And so next we have Team Light Blue.
As our presentation is that performing the learning process for mid-level EPI managers, delivering the existing MLM trainings through in a new ways. But yesterday we took it through this title. We explained the concept, the objectives, so that I will go quickly on those. Okay. Here, the main concept is to institute a process with a goal of continuous workforce performance on improving performance efficient and utilization of the resources through blended problem-based individual, peer, and team learnings. So we have the problems. We have the lack of the API competences, insufficiency of the job site classroom style trainings. So I'll take you quickly on this. The objectives is to improve and sustain the workforces, institutionalize continuous learning process. This one I'll skip a bit. Let us go to the criteria. Criteria is we have competence measurements based on the MLM curriculum. We need to measure the change in the KPI indicators. Also, we need to do the individual completions of the modules. We need a team to use a process problem identifies we need to use the team process. As also we need to use the supportive supervision on the integrating the learning processes. Okay, how do we measure this? We measure this through the participant self evaluation. We use a smile sheets. Also on the team evaluation of the process after a certain number of the sessions. It's also we do the supervision visit observations, so that to understand how far are they progressing. Feedback to collect during the learning collaboratives, as well as post-intervention evaluation, also routine analysis of the KPI data. Measurement plans. We have we need to have a baseline measurement for the technical competencies. It's also, we use a monthly supervision visit. This should not be, it is not a monthly, it is not a must to be a monthly, but according to the plans, it can be monthly, quarterly, and whatever. At completion of the module, the 6 months after the completion, so that we may also do the evaluation. Routine analysis of the KPI, as long as by the time they submit their data, so that we'll do the evaluation. Also, the team evaluation after a certain meeting. Who will analyze the data? We intend to use the existing API, to use the existing API system, so that the data person that will be guiding all this through the analysis. Who will receive the analyzed data? Training working group, also technical working group, as well as the project implementers. We need to ask ourselves: is this intervention is it real working? Also, we also need to know that how can the intervention be improved? Is it cost effective? Any negative consequences of the intervention, is it scalable for the whole country? It's also, we need to know the resources that we may need. We may need advocacy lunch meetings, and also we may also need resources to create the MLM training so that they can fit into the context. Enabling the context is that government and stakeholder buy-in is a key issue. So that if we have the government buy-in, so that everything can go without any problem. Key stakeholders. We talked about having all EPI key stakeholders, so that everything from the beginning, so that all of this, they can be on the same board. Government structures, we need steering committee and budget line for the projection of the local governments. Capability required is a project management. We need a structure and a material design. Also, we need the evaluation. Potential risks. We have external and as well as internal. Local government commitment, political commitment, MLM staff rotation, turnover, as well as competing government program priorities. Internal risk is project and staff rotation and turnover. No project funding, availability of competent technical staffs. Safety and security concern is also, we need a very safe environment to run this. Planning for the sustainability after partner funding. Keep the ongoing cost low after initial material and the implementation. Government buy-in, leveraging to other partners available. Incentives, we need to offer certificates. We need to offer the participation of the face-to-face will be really required after the successful completion of the self-learning, so that somebody can qualify for the face-to-face. Also, we use them as a master trainers. Those who complete successfully, they can be used as a master trainers. Communication plan, is we have to, at the beginning, we have to have the event, maybe on TV or newspaper, and community events, regular updates of the technical working group, and end project dissemination. Also, we need a conference presentation so that to share it on the global plan. Thank you. This is my beautiful team. It's a very helpful team. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What questions we got for Team Light Blue?
Alex, remind me, how are the master trainers identified?
We use those who complete successfully. We may use them to train others. Yes.
Alex, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we have Team Light Green, incorporating up-to-date information in pre-service training.
Anyway, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our group worked on incorporating up-to-date information in pre-service training, and these are the team members. Sorry, this is a build-up of what happened yesterday. As a problem statement, we discovered that previously conducted need assessment was conducted in pre-service institution by WHO in Afro region in collaboration with NESI, and what was found was that EPI content was neither outlined in the curriculum or is incomplete, so it's not up to date. Reference material probably and demonstrations were lacking in some institutions. Time allocated was too short. Lecturers and tutors not updated, and there is also the harmony between pre-service and in-service training is somehow lacking. There was also a dichotomy among the pre-service training institutions in countries, nursing schools, medical schools controlled by different ministries. There is also the issue of public and private institutions. So it becomes a difficult thing to change curriculum. You and I know how difficult it is to change curriculum in country. So a prototype curriculum for immunization was developed in 2006 and is widely distributed. There was an evaluation that was conducted, and these were some of the key findings from the evaluation. About 31% of the medical schools and 47% of the nursing schools were actually using the updated curriculum. The challenges discovered include lack of trained teachers. Not too many teachers are trained on EPI. And there is lack of updated reference materials in our schools, lack of detailed lesson plans and supervision by schools at the field during placement of students, and content is not updated to reflect the current advances in EPI. So our goal was to produce a medical and nursing school graduates with up-to-date knowledge and skills to deliver high-quality immunization services. Our direct impacts improve pre-service teaching, improve EPI service delivery, and reduce need for in-service training with all the attendant huge dollars that is needed there, and indirectly save life and also save some cost. The objectives were to integrate updated EPI content into pre-service institution and into our national nursing schools and maybe some selected medical schools, one private and one public, and regular update. Activities include creation of a task force of stakeholders, and which will have subgroups, as was mentioned yesterday, for the nursing schools and for the medical school, conduct a need assessment, compare the current situation, current institutional curriculum with prototype curriculum and also gauge the faculty skills and knowledge as far as immunization is concerned. We need to update and enhance the curriculum, which is recommended. What is recommended is about 19 hours of theory in classroom, 10 hours practicum, laboratory skills, 4 weeks clinical attachment and whatever. The assumptions as at yesterday were that there will be support and willingness from the stakeholders, and there will be human and material resources, and the partners are also listed here. Now, today's assignment, which is measurement, the output we intend to measure, we need to conduct a need assessment, which is a baseline. We compare the current institutional curriculum with the prototype curriculum, assess the faculty skills and knowledge as far as immunization is concerned. Then we will have updated curriculum and lesson plans available, reference materials and demonstration equipment available in libraries and skill labs. Adapted checklists will be available and, at the practical sites. Number of teachers trained on the new EPI issues will also be part of the output we want to measure. Then the number of students enrolled and that have graduated. This, of course, we probably require the help of an external evaluator, which will be identified by the stakeholder group so that bias will be minimized. The outcomes include whether do students demonstrate expected levels of knowledge and skills after graduation. And this can be done either during the training in form of a formative evaluation, maybe at the end of every lesson, or summative evaluation at the end of the course or at graduation. This can be done. We will be able to test their knowledge and skills, whether through multiple choice or through OSCE, as the case may be. We also want to gauge the satisfaction of the student with the course itself. It's always natural that people tend to forget how the student feel about the course. So we want to know whether the student, how satisfied are they with the course and the practicum evaluation in terms of the content. In terms of the teachers themselves, what were the teachers able to give them what they were expecting as far as the course is concerned. And of course, the faculty too must not forget them. Were they really satisfied with the new curriculum, what the content is, vis-a-vis what they were previously used to. Effectiveness and impact in the long term, we want to measure maybe in perhaps 6 months or so after graduation. We send maybe an email, a scenario-based question to graduates through their alumni network or human resource information system where available, depending on which one is available, to really get what is happening in the field, whether what they have acquired is really useful to them. We get feedback also from supervisors at work site because these graduates, we expect them to work under some people, and we expect to get feedback from the people that are supervising them and see whether is there any really impact of the new training. And also the delivery of immunization services, we want to see it improve. We want to see whether it has improved. And we aim to incorporate these feedback continuously into the curriculum and lesson plan so that, because the biggest room is room for improvement. Of course, external evaluators will also need to come in some way. Sustainability and financial requirement, we will need resources for the project management, stakeholders engagement, assignment, and assessment and evaluation of skills, curriculum adaptation, procurement, and so on and so forth. This is a small structure we propose. You can see the donor, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, stakeholders, and so on. There are a lot of risks, but one prominent one that we envisage is the fact that there may be resistance to revise curriculum at national level. We all know how centrally it's done, and the process is cumbersome. So in that way, we can mitigate that by, let's say, reaching out to some faculties to update what they are used to teaching even before the final long-awaited curriculum review take place. In that way, we believe that the content of what is being taught will be improved. Thank you very much.
Team Dark Blue, creating structures to support change.
Hello, everyone, and I'm standing in here representing ministers of health from developing countries. Please, can you stand up for recognition, please, honorable ministers? Thank you. Actually, we came to Barcelona for a very serious discussion and engagement because the health of our children and mothers remain very dear to us. And we sat down and came up with a very important decision that moving forward, and we have our project that we have named Trend to Change Initiative, TCI. And you will all agree with me that we all want to succeed. But if we really want to succeed sustainably, government should be there at the driver's seat. And that's very important and that's very powerful in our minds. And based on that, we came up with this initiative. And we came up with this initiative bearing in mind some of the key problems that you are all aware about. We all know, we've been discussing this from experts all over the country, that the current human resource for our EPI are not adequately trained. And this has really put a challenge to our quality of our immunization service delivery. And we all know that we've spent lots of money in this capacity building arena, but the outcomes are always not good enough. And we have inconsistencies across various levels in terms of the way and manner we provide this training. And very importantly, there's that difficulty to introduce tests and most importantly, institutionalize some of these innovations that can really help around and turn around what we want to be. And for us, we agree for a single solution that we believe will apply very well with all the countries. And this solution is to establish a very strong governance and leadership structure within our ministries of health that has other important stakeholders that will be able to provide very effective learning through these technical working groups. And the horizon is in the next 5 years or 10, we should be able to, as countries, institutionalize an effective and innovative learning or training in order to achieve a resilient and responsive human resource for health. This is our vision, this is our dream. And for us, moving forward, we agreed on some key critical steps that we need to take in order to reach this preferred destination. And what are these? First and foremost, we strongly believe and agree together as ministers that we need to generate this evidence of the extent of this problem and most importantly, on the potential impact our solution is going to bring to the table. We know we have precedents that we need to also get the buy-in, so we need to really have some powerful sentence. And most importantly, we want to create that sense of urgency for people to realize that we are embarking into a serious journey that has a very strong implication as to way and manner our health systems will work. And secondly, in doing that, we also realize that we need to really identify those important leaders within government and within amongst our stakeholders that are supporting us, and also innovators that are ready to try, that are ready to support us to achieve this important dream. And most importantly, we want to cash in on opportunities that are within and without in our various countries. And the third thing is, we really, in achieving that, want to create a very strong platforms for innovations and learning. And here we're thinking about establishing an innovation tournament. We've heard that it worked very well in private sector, so we feel it can also work within our system. We are also thinking about capacity professional development. How can we entice our human resource for health to have this knack for knowledge and apply this knowledge to better and improve their service delivery? We also think that yes, it's not just government alone. We need to have a very strong public-private partnership engagement and collaboration to achieve our desired vision. Number 4, we also feel that we need to have harmonized, strong training or learning plans that at all levels, that has very strong key performance indicators and measurement mechanisms. And we also ask ourselves, what do we really want to measure? We are technocrats, but we agreed that we have 2 important things that we need to look out for. The quality of the training outcomes, how our health workers in our various countries are performing. We are very, very serious and determined on that. And also we want to know how many within our various countries these innovative learnings have been tested. The details of this, we throw it back to the technical managers for them to be able to give us a clear sense of measurement. But for us, this remains very key to us, and we really want to ensure that we drive this process forward. Then the question is, what is new? Of course, as you see us standing, leaving all the luxuries of our office and the stress for 3 days here, it shows that there is this high-level commitment, and we really want to ensure that accountability remains the focus in this journey that we want to take moving forward. And we also want to be sure that we all agree, you will all agree with us that whatever investment that you put there on the table, if you don't have a very strong human resource to turn around these investments into a practical application for the good of our people, then we are lost. So the quality of health workers remains very key to us and is there to achieving our immunization results. And very importantly, this enabling environment that will help us to promote innovations. I made mention of the tournament, but I'm also mentioning about safe space. It is not just when you fail in your test, it's not a failure in itself, but I think it's a way to tell us what not to do as the future moves forward. And then the last but not the least, we want to be sure that we now begin to systematically tie our training opportunities to career developments of our human resource for health. This, we strongly believe, will help to really spur and encourage human resource in our various countries to really push forward. So having government driving this process through a technical working group, it remains our key and important strategy towards ensuring we have a resilient and a strong human resource for health. Thank you very much.
Very good. So we have our presentation ready to roll for dark green, training in fragile states.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through training in fragile states. There's a lot of what you will see on the slide that we had gone through yesterday. But we did review our concept today because bearing in mind the fragility of the states and the lack of access or difficulties with access, we realized that we needed to expand the scope of our project to look at training on the minimum package of care for the delivery of primary health care services through blended learning, of which routine immunization, or EPI, would be the launch pad. But this is the scope of our interest in training. You know this background, I talked about it yesterday. There are issues with security, insurgency, high levels of internal displacement, including of the health workers, poorly experienced or non-experienced health workers, in spite of adequacy of training, have been deployed to provide health services. This results in outbreaks of preventable diseases, the fact that there are ongoing introductions of new and quite expensive vaccines, and overall primary healthcare delivery is fragmented and often compromised in fragile states. We want to ensure again that at least we have one fully trained health worker on these areas I have put below. So we are looking at EPI, management of common health conditions, nutrition, antenatal care and delivery services. At the very least, you have one fully trained health worker in the facilities able to provide these services. These assumptions we talked through yesterday as well. Infrastructural requirements for service provision need to be available, the technical expertise for developing the training materials, resources, the health workforce, as I've referred to the fact that there's a lot of internal displacement, and of course the political will in the state to look at primary health care and routine immunization as the launchpad for this project. The partners, as we know, and I think in every group so far has talked about the fact that you do need the government. We know we need the community leaders because of the fragility in the states and issues with political will. The development partners, funding remains a challenge, and especially security agencies, formal security agencies. As with every other group, we know that we require needs assessment, development, co-development of the training curricula. And yesterday when I was talking, I missed this point out. We are also very interested in peer-to-peer learning as one of our activities, where we see and we understand the fact that this is a difficult terrain, difficulties with access, but within the environment of the health worker, there should be that other person, that other better skilled person who can also be a peer or a mentor for their development. And we've talked about using job aids, paper-based job aids, checklists, instructional videos that would be used for training or for capacity building. Different levels of follow-up, as discussed again yesterday. Pre-training, during training, and post-training assessments are required, and they'll be tailored to the healthcare worker's performance. We would establish systems for in-facility healthcare worker supervision by the officer in charge, who on a weekly to bi-weekly basis, using a checklist, verifies that this healthcare worker's performance is improving, and external supervision as well as on-the-job training using checklists by the peer mentor, by the capacity building team as well. These are important to us. We intend to measure at a baseline the performance of the healthcare worker's competence, which would inform the overall needs assessment for this project. Intervention-specific outcomes, we are looking at things around training effectiveness, measured against predefined key performance indicators. We would like to also measure healthcare workers' improvement in performance against this baseline measure, looking at their knowledge retention and their improvements in on-the-job performance. Programmatic outcomes that could be attributed to improvement in healthcare workers' capacity. So if you use immunization, for example, stock management, reduced wastage rate. If you had, for example, a 50% wastage rate because healthcare workers just did not know what to do with the vaccines, we could actively see that this is reducing. I'm not saying that we should check whether all of a sudden malaria has reduced from 100% to 10% and attribute that to training, because there are other mitigating factors in that regard. Measurements will be done by on-site supervisors. It's very important for us that the officer in charge carries out supervision. This is a typo. And we may also look at telephone surveys, considering the It's very epileptic in fragile states. You could have a breakdown in politics in the states at any point in time. So we are going to rely on telecommunication media as well for assessing improvements in performance. This is on-site supervisors checklist. Here I was thinking of on-site peer support validation as well, because that person is within their vicinity. In considering measuring adverse consequences resulting from the project, we said to ourselves, what's the counterfactual? Initially, you had face-to-face learning. So what were those benefits of face-to-face learning that this new model would not provide? So we recognize that in fragile states, participants are at different levels of knowledge and learning needs, which may actually require some degree of face-to-face mentorship. There's possible misinterpretation of the job aids. The job aids may not even be used at all or adhered to. So it's very important that there's program support management looking at the quality of delivery of health services, and that should be actively assessed and improvement fostered using supportive supervision. Frequency, we're looking at weekly to bi-weekly by the on-site supervisor. The monthly peer support network should also measure. At least quarterly by the training team. The data, we would like to include a self-assessment medium by that healthcare worker himself to see on a specific work area, what is am I improving? The officer in charge obviously should also analyze the data, and the training support team. The data should be received by the individual so that he or she can tell his level of improvement. And the multiple stakeholders would receive the data based on their portfolios and responsibilities. So the government itself, the peer mentor, the officer in charge. There was some talk about the donors at this point, but we're also sensitive. We understand that in certain states and in certain countries, sharing of data it requires some permission. So we're being sensitive here to that effect. And we are hoping that with the measurement plan, we should be able to assess and verify performance improvements and improvements in coverage, quantity, and quality of healthcare workers' performance. For integration into the program, we realize that there must be a tool designed and developed that is specific for fragile states. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. What would work in Lagos State, for example, in Nigeria, would not necessarily be what is effective in Borno State, for example. So we are saying there should be a tool that is designed specifically to address fragile states. Users' feedback, the individuals who are being trained, their feedback on course content and their self-assessment of their improvement in learning should be shared with the training team. The supervisor's feedback on improvement in performance as a consequence of the model would also be shared with the training team. And changes in program performance measured against program targets, which are attributable to the healthcare workers' learning, should be shared with governments so that they may consider including this in further program improvement strategies around learning and capacity building. We would integrate feedback in line with existing feedback systems within the states. So I used the example of Borno. I say we have the EOCs, and at that medium, especially during the campaigns, changes are communicated very frequently, or improvements or things that need to be done to improve the system are communicated very frequently. So you use what is existing in those locations. And change will continuously be reinforced through the peer support networks and the community of practice professionals, community of practice and professional networks who all converge around this central theme of the new training model. And there's a lot of communication in there and it's reinforced. We plan to share lessons learned from the project during programmatic reviews. We want project results and lessons learned to be shared routinely through the training model development team at all phases of the project. And lessons learned will be shared through specific learning working groups, or training working groups as the other group have referred to, or structures within the fragile state. And shared from that state level group to the corresponding national structure within the other states of the Federation, mid-project and at project end, so that there could be possibilities of scale-up, because there's national awareness. What are our needs? Financial resource requirements, obviously. We hope that there should be an initial startup fund for a pilot, possibly from the foundation. And based on the success of the pilot, 2 minutes please, based on the success of the pilot, we are pushing very heavily for the government, with some graduated partner support. I have here all the UN agencies and partners involved in emergency operations to provide financial and technical support so that the model can be scaled up. We need job aids, checklists, supportive supervision within and outside the facilities. We need the subject matter experts to support with development and continuous review and analysis of the products. Political buy-in, and we would like a political champion or sponsor of this project who would be the voice beyond the health facilities. Of course, the stakeholders, the trainees, the supervisors, the community, the technical working groups as a governance structure, and we've identified the following capabilities required: project management, instructional design, financial management, logistics arrangements because of the fragile situation, communication expertise, and security expertise. Worsening insecurity could, as an external factor, could obviously sabotage this project. Lack of government buy-in, and of course lack of funding. I mean, I just threw it out there. We would like the foundation to support. They could say no. And then internal risks. The support aids may not be used. The healthcare workers could have competing priorities. From a safety and security challenges, we've talked about this significantly, but we do know that we require the formal security structures in place in the state to provide support, and each health facility must have security personnel in place to protect the staff. Incentives, this is my last slide. We believe that that the healthcare workers would ultimately be incentivized by demonstrable improvement in their performance, and as the previous speaker said, this should tie into career progression. Endorsement by their peers, and if this particular health worker continues to show improvement and becomes highly skilled, that person could evolve and become a peer mentor for another health worker in the system. Increased community recognition based on their performance. We've seen these things happen a lot, where a health facility that has dedicated staff, you find patients move into that health facility because there's been community recognition of that facility. Increased geographical scope of impact and recognition, I've talked about within the state, beyond the state, and participation and sharing of lessons learned in other fora, which could be funded. This is the point in time where we are saying, come and share your lessons learned. You may go to a workshop, you may go to a conference, and you could share lessons learned from that state with another country. And that is that one thing that we see would then require some funding. The traditional incentives, as we've referred to date, is only at this point. Thank you.
Team Orange will be speaking about incentivizing learning.
We had a very complex issue to tackle, and I'm sure all of you here will agree that what we needed to solve cuts across all that you are doing also. So initially, we actually thought that we should do it the project idea pattern way. But then we now discover that the more we delve into that aspect, the more complex the problem becomes. And we need to keep it simple for all of you to understand. So we are really sorry we changed the way you wanted us to do it. Yes, we changed it to a framework pattern that will keep it simple for you to understand. And we'll be able to accommodate all your views and all your suggestions as we go along. So let me just remind us of the problem statement. All of you are spending huge sums of money annually to train without any good results to show for it. Right or wrong? Right. And this is annually, it's been going on for decades, not just years, decades. So, what did we want to do? In terms of our goal, we said, look, what we needed to do was move away from applying incentives to training to applying incentives to learning so that you cultivate or you develop a culture of learning and performance. I think the whole theme of this conference is about that culture of learning and performance. And that's the simplest goal I think we could come across and say, look, let's shift. It's a paradigm shift now. Move to a culture of learning and performance. So that's our goal. And with this goal in mind, of course, you'll expect quite a lot of impact. And impacts will cover areas such as behavioral change in the health worker himself, knowledge diffusion that we all want to happen, and other issues about enhancing performance will all come into play. Now, we couldn't put all this into the typical project pattern you wanted us to do, so we've come up with an approach where you have a framework that will accommodate everything. And how do we start? We want to start by analyzing the current incentive systems that are in place. We will also analyze the current learning systems as it pertains to motivation. We've all been here, we've been taught about coaching, mentoring, about other things out there that will really motivate, intrinsic motivations, etc. So what are those systems that are in place that are currently doing this? We'll analyze. The older system that is in place will also analyze. And then when we do that successfully, we will be able to define the problems that require solution. When we define those problems that require solution, we will also go one step further to identify what the root causes are. So with the root causes in place now, we can now start the project approach and prioritize, put up the objectives, put up an implementation plan, and move on ahead and try to implement. But we do not want to do this without concurrent measurements in place. So every step of the way, we are concurrently measuring. We are measuring many parameters that will help us to refine the objectives we want to achieve, helping us to measure exactly the kind of impact we will see and how the system will go, will transform the system smoothly. Let me put it that way. Now, if you need to do this, you've got to have some values in mind that you want to carry along so that you don't derange. And we've come to understand that these values are dear to all of you here. You want a competent health worker? Yes or no? Good. You want a health worker who is a little bit autonomous within the legal confines, right? It's passionate. You also want a health worker that can relate very well and has a community of practice where he can really feel he belongs and will be able to be motivated by that. Am I right? Now, but then, this is where you need to be a little bit careful, because in the whole distance, you are trying to remove incentives to fit a new system, isn't it? There is a risk here. And the risk here is that incentives, when you remove them, they can have the untoward consequences that the person starts feeling that it's being punished or something like that. And we have to bear that in mind. And we want to avoid that risk by continuously engaging the health worker in the whole of this process. So he's being engaged. We know his feelings, his perceptions, and that's been taken into consideration as we go along. So in terms of measurements, very simple. All we just need to do is look at the kind of culture we want. Is it in place or is not in place? And we measure that. And we specifically want to set up behavior-based ways to evaluate. Benchmarks will be in place to evaluate that. Specifically, I think we would like to see that behavior change has happened. We would like to see that knowledge has diffused. We would like to see that performance has been enhanced. And in that way, we think we'll be able to accommodate everybody's view, and we'll move away from this system that we have practiced for so long that has not given us results to a system now that we think and hopefully will give us results, taking all your parameters into considerations. Just to add a little bit, that in this approach that we're trying to implement, it's not something that you sit here within one day and you develop the ideas fully. It cannot be even in 1 or 2 days, but it's going to take several engagements, several iterations on and off before you're able to complete this process. So this is what we think we need to do, and this is our presentation. I hope it meets all your satisfaction and you're happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From my experience, the current system covers only expenses. I don't know if any country gives incentives. Therefore, how do you define incentive, and what are the incentives given now in the health system?
The incentives in the current systems range from actually monetary rewards that you pay as per diems to several other kind of non-monetary rewards that you also give. But here we are not saying that the incentives are not needed or not necessary. They are, but how you are applying it. When you apply it exactly at training, then you are asking him that tomorrow, if that is not in place, he will not come for the training. Or if you remove it, you are asking him that go to other places where that incentive is available. And that's not what we want. I think we are looking at incentives in a more broad, general view rather than just the money and other things. And we've toyed with the idea that certificates will be very good incentives, graded certificates will be very good incentives in this kind of scheme to get things going. So don't misunderstand that we're trying to do this. And that's why I think the risk to the project is there, that when you remove it and you don't replace it with something that they feel they suggested and they own, you'll be in trouble. So we're not going to do it in isolation and say, hey, stop items.
Right, time for a quick question.
Yes, sure. In your discussions, how did you consider the question of the risk of leaving the status quo mostly unchanged versus the risk of actually making a more radical change? Yes.
Tough one. I'm not the only member of the team. Vio is here. I know we discussed. What we think is that if you have these values in mind and you are measuring concurrently, then you'll be able to identify certain things that you may need to keep, because it's not all that is bad. And certain things that you may need to just remove, but you remove it in such a way that you change it to fit your current, the radical change you are looking for. There's always that risk of removing incentives or even changing it. There's no doubt about that. But if you change it and he perceives that the value in the change is higher than what the current incentives are, I think he will check it. But if you want to add more to that, because it's been a subject of heated debate in the group, and quite a lot of theories were actually also discussed. And my team leader is here anyway.
The group received a subject matter expert while we were discussing, and we would recognize Matthew, who is here, who really gave us a very good framework, and the basis really is evidence because of meta-analysis research. I think we need to mention this one, that there is really a risk for stopping incentives versus slowly detaching incentives and turning it into a culture of learning and linking it with performance. I think that's really a very key message to this presentation.
Very good. So let's now do Team Red, our last presentation. But a round of applause. So post-training follow-up.
So I know this is the last presentation. You're all probably a little tired. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So we are the post-training follow-up group, and we had some debate about whether or not to keep that title, and then we decided we'll just go with it. So our problem statement is we don't have an institutionalization and culture of post-training follow-up for routine immunization right now. So what we wanted to do is build a culture of and mechanism for continuous learning. Our concept is the establishment of a multi-dimensional support system at the district level using a targeted approach. So we had three main objectives: enhancing skills and performance of healthcare workers at the service delivery level, fostering a culture of management and accountability for enabling environment for continuous learning, and setting up an environment to increase staff motivation. We didn't have time to go into all three of these objectives, so we're going to focus when we look at measurement for number 2. I'm going to skip this because we talked about it yesterday. So we had several different activities that we wanted to do. Gap assessment of healthcare workers, managers, and trainers. Restructure of the district monthly meeting. And this is to capacitate institutions to create continuous learning. Right now, monthly meetings are happening, but it's often that there is no peer learning that's happening. It's just they might be showing data and then moving on. So we want to build a learning institution through these district meetings that are already hopefully occurring. And where they're not occurring, we want to start those meetings. Develop tools, guidelines, job aids, set up a public recognition system for healthcare workers, and set up an environment for peer experience sharing and feedback. Our criteria for measurement for objective 2. So I just went through the activities, and then what we were going to do for measurement is a use of peer sharing platform, and this could take several different forms. We had talked about, depending on the context, it could be a mobile platform, it could be at the district level, different types of meetings, at the health facility level, it would have to be something different and not mobile. So anyway, whatever the context, you would design for that. Use of management tools provided for continuous improvement. We never focus at the management level. So we wanted to focus on providing job aids, guidance for how to really be a good manager and do supportive supervision well and focus really on that management level. Continuity in activities. So we thought one of the key gaps is that there isn't linkage between activities. So for example, you do the training, there isn't linkage then to the district meetings, to quarterly meetings, to supportive supervision visits, creating a plan that really links all of those activities. Evidence on root cause analysis, really looking at what are the issues that are happening in that specific context and then adapting for that context. Actions implemented and linked to the previous or the next meeting. And so actually this one was more about designing action plans with your district level that include the district level meetings, supportive supervision, all of these different activities, and following those to make sure that they happen as planned. And then we also wanted to, so we thought one of the critical components was really setting up this environment for peer experience sharing and learning and creating a place that was safe. And one of the ways that we were going to measure that was through looking at improved accuracy of data. So if the health workers felt comfortable during their meetings sharing data and saying, you know, instead of the target of 12 children, we were only able to immunize 6, and this is why. That would be an example of a learning environment where they felt comfortable actually sharing what is actually happening on the ground. So this is integration. How are we going to integrate the findings into our work? Monthly reviews, and so we're going to from the monthly district meetings also submit this up so that there's accountability from the higher level government. Annual reviews, so lessons learned, try to build this into already existing platforms like the EPI review. We wanted to do a newsletter in which you would recognize health facilities, individuals who are doing well, and you know, start a learning and sharing culture that really recognizes those that are doing well. We thought it would be important to have, as we're focusing on management, a management support group, and you can define what that means depending on the context. And also training videos. Actually, I don't know what that is, but and then the means, so we were, this is just how we were going to collect the data. Needs for success. So we need an enabling environment. We thought it was, really, really critical to have a champion advocate at the national level. We thought there would need to be incentives to continue to do this continuous learning, and an unwillingness to accept less, or a willingness to accept less, actually. So we always focus on targets, and we want to think about changing that focus so that we're not constantly expecting our health workers to meet the 100% performance every single time, but really to focus on process and what are the ways that we can be improving. Coordination, so traditional stakeholders, public and private, advocacy, I talked about that, and resources, of course, the same that you guys have all described, financial, material, human. Risks, no buy-in from the government, staff turnover. We thought a big one would be no coverage improvement. So we all rely on coverage improvement really to mark our success, and we want to get away from that, but it's still really an important indicator, and we thought with health system strengthening, this is not something that we're going to see immediately. Demotivation. The same thing, like if we're not seeing coverage improvement immediately, are people going to be less motivated? Project incentives, visualization of results, sharing quick wins, peer sharing, recognition, feedback, accountability. I don't know where we're going with that. I'm really sorry. And then our communication plan, customize information to share with stakeholders, supervisors, implementers, governments, funders, community, share information to guide planning sessions, disseminate information, lessons learned in the monthly newsletter we've talked about. Thanks.